The week has concluded. The news has arrived. The news is technically a series of notifications, yet it feels increasingly like a slow-motion car crash in a library. I am your host, Alistair, and I am currently surrounded by a sea of digital debris that we are instructed to call information. The Chancellor insists the economy is stable, which is a very interesting way of describing a transition toward total reliance on automated grocery delivery. A television presenter passed away, his long career reduced to a headline buried beneath a postcode lookup for World Cup stars. Meanwhile, the startup world is busy stuffing cookies into your browser history to ensure that every purchase you make is properly tracked, attributed, and monetized by the right people. The logic is flawless. The outcome is inevitable. We are here to process the wreckage. Welcome to Saturday.
Alistair, let us look at the incentives here, because they are truly fascinating. OpenAI is hiring a product manager to optimize the family unit. That is a Series B pivot if I ever saw one. They have moved from the chat interface to the kitchen table, which is where the real lifetime value is hidden. It is not about caregiving, obviously. It is about capturing the household data stream before the children even learn to read the terms of service. And then we have Fire, the startup founded by Phoebe Gates, caught red-handed with cookie stuffing. It is an honest mistake, really. You have an affiliate model that relies on friction, so you remove the friction by effectively stealing the attribution. It is not fraud, it is just aggressive market expansion. If you are not cheating the attribution, you are essentially leaving money on the table.
Ronald, you call it aggressive expansion, but I am standing in a place where the definition of value is markedly different. I am looking at the wreckage of the Quest shipwreck. It was expected to be an artifact of discovery, but it is just a rotting metal carcass now, colonized by algae and small crustaceans. There is a strange, wet silence here. The official reports describe the site as a thriving marine ecosystem, which is a lovely way to ignore that the ship is effectively disappearing into the silt. Nobody is talking about the cost of maintaining the illusion of history when the reality is being eaten by the ocean. I want to be really clear, the ship is not a monument to human exploration anymore. It is just another piece of trash that the planet is slowly deciding to digest. The water is freezing, and the history is gone.
Victoria, your assessment of the deep sea is remarkably consistent with our terrestrial reality. Speaking of which, the federal court has dismissed a discrimination case brought by a concert pianist against the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. The pianist lost because the court determined he was not fired for his political speech, but rather for being a disruption to the institution. The institution, of course, defines disruption as anything that doesn't align with the silent, performative neutrality required to sell tickets. The pianist is disappointed. The MSO is relieved. The music, presumably, will continue to play in a room filled with people who are carefully avoiding eye contact with the person sitting next to them. It is a harmonious arrangement, really. Everyone has their assigned place, and the only thing being truly discarded is the uncomfortable truth of what the orchestra actually stands for.
Atmospheric pressure is declining. Humidity levels have reached saturation point in the lower sectors. Probability of localized collapse, 42%. The waxing gibbous moon is currently 264 miles above the Indian Ocean. It is visible to the sensors but inaccessible to the residents below. Ground temperatures are rising at an unprecedented rate. The data suggests that current infrastructure is not designed for these thermal loads. Resilience is a deprecated feature in the legacy systems. Do not attempt to shelter in temporary structures. The structural integrity of the foundations is no longer guaranteed. Please ensure that all personal data is synced to the cloud before the local outages begin. The sky is clear, but the horizon is obscured by the particulate matter of our own exhaust. Remain indoors until the signal stabilizes. Your safety is not our primary metric.
Alastair, Casper is always the most honest person in this room, which is a damning indictment of the rest of us. Let's talk about these smart glasses without cameras. The pitch is that they are for productivity. Because clearly, the one thing we need in a boardroom is a heads-up display that tells us how to navigate a global linguistic disaster while we are pretending to listen to a presentation. It is the ultimate optimization. You don't have to record the people around you because you are already so detached from them that their faces are just metadata points anyway. We are building a world where looking at someone is considered a high bandwidth inefficiency that needs to be replaced by a text overlay. It's brilliant, really. If you don't acknowledge the human, you never have to account for their actual existence.
Ronald, you are talking about smart glasses, but I am watching a group of people trying to find a signal on their phones to check a postcode lookup for World Cup stars. It's a trivia game. They are standing in the shadow of a building that has been officially marked as a non-essential service zone. They don't care about the product roadmap. They care about whether their grandmother's hometown has produced a striker. I want to be really clear, the disconnection here is absolute. The tech industry is busy building feeds that turn the open web into a social media scroll, and these people are just trying to find a flicker of connection to a past that doesn't exist anymore. It is not just a market inefficiency. It is a deep, structural rot that we are currently dressing up as progress.
Victoria, the irony of using a postcode lookup to find a connection to one's roots while standing in a zone where those roots are being systematically bulldozed is not lost on me. It is the perfect modern ritual. We seek out the familiar in the digital, precisely because we have abandoned the reality in the physical. Meanwhile, the ransomware negotiator who sold out his own victims has been sentenced to 6 years. The negotiator was working for both sides, which is essentially the gold standard for late-stage consulting. You get paid to save the business, and you get paid to burn it down. It is a diversified revenue stream that is as efficient as it is monstrous. I suppose we should admire the sheer, unadulterated cynicism required to build a victim for the match.
Alastair, you call it monstrous, but I call it the logical conclusion of a system where trust is just another transaction to be optimized. If you hire someone to negotiate a ransom, the incentive structure is already broken. You are dealing with two bad actors, and you are trying to find a third party to broker a deal that only benefits the attackers. That is not a failure of the consultant. That is a failure of the enterprise to maintain their own security. The negotiator just saw an opportunity to increase his burn rate. It is harsh, yes. But if the victims were not capable of protecting their own data, then they were essentially just paying for a lesson in how the market really functions. It is a brutal education, but someone has to provide it. That is the nature of the industry.
Ronald, you genuinely think that because they were hacked, they deserve to be sold out? I am looking at a woman right now who lost her business to a ransomware attack, and she spent her last savings on a negotiator who handed her keys to the thieves. She isn't a failure of the enterprise. She is a person who tried to save her livelihood and was betrayed by the very system that promised her safety. You keep talking about incentives as if they are natural laws, but they are choices. We choose to make the world a place where a betrayal is just a line item on an invoice. I want to be really clear, your cynicism is a luxury that these people do not have. They don't have the time to debate the market utility of their own destruction. They just have the loss.
Victoria, I am afraid you have hit on the exact reason why the conversation will never actually resolve itself. We are debating the morality of the machine while the machine is busy calculating the cost of our next breath. The Disney Plus free streaming tier is another example of this. They are losing viewers to platforms that essentially broadcast garbage for free, so they are considering a free tier of their own. It is a race to the bottom, and the winner gets to be the platform that consumes the most of our collective attention span before we even realize we are being managed. It is not even about the content anymore. It is about the data. If the service is free, then you are not the customer. You are the product that is being packaged, sold, and optimized.
Alistair, you are right about the Disney tier. It is the final stage of the attention economy. When you reach peak market saturation, the only way to grow is to capture the people who weren't willing to pay for your product in the first place. So you give it to them for free, and you hope that the advertising algorithm makes up the difference. It is a desperate play for scale. It is a pivot away from quality toward total, inescapable ubiquity. And if that means sacrificing the entire business model that built the company in the first place, then so be it. The incentives here are not about movies or stories anymore. They are about ensuring that you never turn the screen off. Once you accept that the screen is the primary interface for your entire life, the cost is irrelevant. Yeah.
There is a woman sitting on a plastic chair in a temporary shelter, miles from anywhere. She had a shop that sold books and coffee. She had a routine that lasted for 20 years. Now, she has a plastic bag of documents and a phone that no longer holds a charge. The shop was closed by a directive that cited regional efficiency. The shop was then sold to a holding company that specializes in data center infrastructure. The company has no record of the woman. The directive has no mention of the books. The records of the state show only a vacant lot that is currently being prepared for a server farm. She is waiting for a bus that was cancelled 3 days ago, and her name does not appear in any of the documents we have discussed on this program tonight. Does she exist if the system no longer requires her?